Welcome to another video from McFatter Tech Musser. If you like these videos, please click subscribe. Well, it's a beautiful day here in South Florida. Welcome back. This is Professor Musser, and we're going to do something a little bit different today. Everything you've seen me do, or most everything you've seen me do, has been in Hyper-V, and while we're going to be doing this in Hyper-V today, we've always done server, Windows 10, maybe it was a lab where we used Kali Linux or Metasploitable, things like that. But when we set up our Hyper-V environments, we were always using a copy of Windows Server as a router, and that's not real practical. I mean, why do I want to configure a full-blown server that's going to use, what, 30 gigabytes of storage? Just to route traffic back and forth. It's not the way you would do it. So if you've not heard of it before, there's a product called VyOS, and here you can see it. If I can get it up on my screen, here it is, and it's open source, based on Linux, and I also love the fact that help Ukraine. We all have to do our part to aid them. And that's another story. Not going to get into that. But I'm going to be playing around with this. I'm going to show you how to set up a two-router environment real simple. It's not going to take very long at all. I'm going to use the rolling release, which is their day-to-day release, not the long-term servicing. Setup's virtually the same. If you want, just search for documentation 1.4, VyOS documentation 1.4. Here it is. Great documentation. Type anything in. For example, maybe I want to know how to configure RIP for my routing. I just type in RIP, press enter, and there it is. Everything I need to know. I was afraid to ask about routing, right? Okay, let's jump back over here. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that we've got virtual switches prepared. Now, I've already got an external switch. That gets me to the internet, right? Well, I want to be able to have a link between my two routers, so we'll call that my WAN link. And then I'm going to do VyOS sub 1 and sub 2 for my two subnets. So I'm going to jump over in Switch Manager. I already have the external, like I said, so private. We're going to create a switch. We're going to call it VyOS link 1-2. And apply that. We'll make another one, and this is going to be VyOS sub 1. Apply it. And yeah, I got a lot of switches here. And finally VyOS sub 2. So now I've got my switches that I can use to create my VMs with. Now you can do generation 1, you can do BIOS, you can do generation 2, UEFI. So you know what? More efficient. I'm going to do virtual machines, and I'm going to do Gen 2s. So next, and we're going to call this VyOS test router 1 Gen 2. Leave the startup memory alone. We'll connect it to my external. We're going to create a new disk. Now, don't have to. I'm going to limit it to 2 gigabits in size. That's all. That's more than enough. We'll press enter. We're going to install from a bootable image file. You can see I've already got it pointed there. There's my rolling update from a number of weeks ago. Next and finish. I'll create my second router, virtual machine, and again this was VyOS test router 2. Generation 2, enter. Now this one I'm going to connect to my WAN link, so VyOS LINK1-2, disk size 2 gig, install from a ISO. We'll select that there and finish, and then we just need to make some setting changes. So Where are they at? There they are. You can see I've got a few of them here I've played around with. Router 1, we're going to go to settings. We're going to add some network adapters. Got to have my network adapter for my WAN link. I've got my external. I want my WAN link. I also want to have for my subnet. So there's sub 1. I'm going to limit the memory. This thing will never use it, but it's never going to use more than a gig of RAM. I've got 2 running in my other machine right now. They're not even using 600 mega RAM each. And then finally we'll turn off our automatic checkpoints like we always do. Going to do the same thing over here on our second router. We're going to add the sub 2 interface. Limit our RAM. I could set this thing not to use more than 512 if I'm not mistaken, but we'll leave it the way it is. And we're going to jump in here and bring that over here off my other screen. Let's fire it up. Oops, what happened there? Oh, I forgot something. If you're using Gen 2, you need to turn off Secure Boot. So we'll turn that off. We'll go over here to the other one and disable the Secure Boot there. And then back and start. There we go. Fire it up. Takes a few seconds to start it up, and I was starting as a live ISO. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to log in VyOS, username, password is the default. For this, I'm just going to leave them alone. This is test environment, right? Not too worried about it. Should be up here in just a moment. And 3, 2, 1, come on, let's go. There we go. So VyOS. The first thing that we want to do is we want to install it to the disk. We don't want to work off the live, right? So I'm going to do install space image. We're going to accept almost every one of the default commands. Enter, probing the drives, partition it, let it do it itself on SDA. Do we want to continue? Yes. I'll type in yes and press enter. What size partition? We'll let it be the maximum. It's creating the file system. Takes just a few moments. Should be done here. How do we want to mount it? And we're going to go with that rolling image number. It's going to create the file system. It's going to copy the config.boot. Password, VyOS. Modify SDA. Setting up grub for our bootloader. And we're done. It says you should reboot now. As a rule, I just tell it to shut down. Let it shut down. We'll let it start up. And now, since it's Gen 2, it's UEFI aware, it's not going to boot off the DVD. It's going to boot off the drive. And there's our images that we can boot from. It's going to come on up. While that's coming up, I'm going to go over and get the router 2 going. Come on over here. By now, router 1 hits loading up over here. Takes about 25 to 30 seconds for it to boot up. Okay, 31, 32, maybe 35. Okay, there it is. While that's starting up over here, I'm going to go ahead and get logged in. Oh, a lot of different common commands. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm at a $ prompt. This is where I can display things, right? So, for example, I'm going to do shconf. So, what do I see? I see my Ethernet adapters and their MAC addresses. Nothing else is configured. What does that tell me? Well, I know what my MAC address is. How does that associate with my Hyper-V? Well, I know my ETH0 ends with 0D, 1 is 0E, 2 is 0F. Well, if I come over here, I can click my networking tab. Right there, 0D is my external. I'm going to be setting that for DHCP. My 0E is my WAN link, And my 0F, which is ETH2, is going to be my subnet. Right? See, you can see it right there. D, E, and F, external, WAN link, subnet. How do I configure that? Well, what I do is I type in conf. Or if you want to type it all out, you can type out configure. Now, configure mode is that $ prompt you see there. So now, let's go ahead and get this configured out. Wow, you know what? We can do more than one thing at once. Let's get that image installed over on 2. So we're going to log in there and install image. Yes. Probe it. Auto. SDA. Yes, I do. Enter. Creating a file system. Here we go. Gonna put it in there. Copying over. We'll copy that config boot. VyOS. SDA, setting up grub. Create, reboot. Okay, shut down. Now. That's off. I'm going to turn it back on, and I'm going to come back over here. So we know what our MAC addresses and adapters and what's virtual switch are associated with, right? So first thing that I'm going to do is understand, from that $ prompt, configure or conf to get into configure mode. If I want to set settings, I use the word set. If I want to edit a already configured setting, edit. Pretty simple. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set my interfaces. So I'm going to do a set I tab complete. I love that tab complete E. So set interfaces Ethernet ETH0. A for address. And how's it going to get an address? DHCP. Going to use the up arrow. I'm going to backspace. I'm going to type in DESC for description, and it's going to be external. Let's rinse and repeat. I'm going to backspace and get rid of ETH0, make it ETH1, and the address for my WAN. This is my WAN link, remember? So I'm going to use something simple. Let's use 10.1.1.1/30. This is the IP address of the interface. We'll backspace. We're going to change that to description. And I'm just going to call it WANLink. WANLink1-2. Okay. And now we want to do 2. And address. And you know what? We're just going to use a 192 network, 192.168.1.1/24. We're just going to use basic Class C networks here. And then we're going to give it the description, and we'll call that just subnet 1. Okay, so I made some changes, right? I have to commit those changes. When you type the word commit and press enter, you're committing to the running config. When I type save and enter, I'm committing to the startup config. So commit, save, and if I do an if config, there I can see I've gotten my external IP address from the DHCP server. I've got my WAN link IP address. I've got my subnet address. I'm in good shape. I'm going to enable RIP on my subnet. So set protocol RIP network. And what's my network? It's 192.168.1.0/24. What is my network? I mistyped there. 0/24. What interface does it listen on? Get rid of that. RIP IN tab complete ETH2. Who's the neighbor that it's going to communicate with? Well, my WAN interface is 10.1.1.1. It's going to be communicating with 10.1.1.2. So, protocols, RIP, neighbor, 10.1.1.2. And how's it going to do it? And you can look up these settings in their documentation if you want. Passive interface, default. Commit and save. Interfaces are configured. Routing's configured. Now, what about network address translation? We need to enable NAT. So, set NAT source rule. Got to give rules because we're going to have multiple ones. So we'll start off with rule 100. You can use any numbering system you want. Description. You can see that if it matches more than one thing, it'll show you all the options. Just we're used to this, right? So outbound NAT for subnet 1. That's easy enough, right? And I'm going to go up, going to backspace. And what's the outbound interface? Well, where does it send it? Out external, ETH0. That's easy enough. Then where does it listen to? Well, get rid of that outbound interface. What's the source address? We're looking for the network 192.168.1.0/24. And how's it going to do the translation? Here again, let the autocomplete work for us. Translation, address, masquerade, enter. While we're doing this, we're going to do this for our subnet 2 and actually for the WAN interface as well. So up, 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 up. Change that to subnet 2. Change my rule to rule 110. Why not? Up, up, up. What interface, what network is it going to listen to? 9.2. Rule 110. Up, up, up. Let's see, we're at, oh, we didn't do, and let's see, over there, we got to look and see on our test router 2, our subnet's going to be on 11. Let's take a look. If I look over here on router 2, VyOS, IF config, and number 11, ending with 11, I can see that that is my ETH1. Yep, ETH1. Okay, so jump back over here to my other. And so ETH1. I got to change my rule number. I don't want to overwrite that one. And then finally, how does that masquerade occur? All I have to do is change 100 to 110. There's my second. Now, I also want to do it for my WANLink. Not sure why I have to, but you do. I'm sure someone smarter than me can tell you why. So we're just going to call this outbound for WANLink, and I'll make that rule 112 or 120 rather. Here again, masquerade. You don't have to do this in any particular order. And the 110, that outbound, that's going to be a different interface. That's going to be on interface 0. 20, and let's see, we did the description. We need to do the source address for that yet. So the source address for that, the network, remember, 1.1.0/30, and change our rule number, 120, commit, and save. Now I know I'm rolling right through this, I don't want this to be an hour-long video doing this. So I've got my interfaces, I've got my RIP, I've got my network address translation. Guess what? This router's set up. If I exit out of configuration mode and I do a shconf for show configuration, there's my addressing, there's my rules for my NAT, there's my RIP protocol. Let's jump over here to our other one. We need to do our interfaces. We know that ETH0s are WANLink, ETH1 is our subnet. So let's get started. We're going to do a conf to get into configure mode. Set interface Ethernet ETH0 address 10.1.1.2/30. And we'll do a description for it. WANLink1-2. Yep, let me make sure we're using the same quotes here. There we are. And this is going to be for description for subnet 2. And we're going to change that interface to ETH1. And then we need to give the IP address for it. And we're going to use 192.168.2.1. Remember, this is the gateway address. Commit. Save it. Interfaces are done. Let's set up that same RIP. So set protocols RIP network 192.168.2.0/24. You know, what is your network? What interface is it going to listen on? ETH1. Let's see, we also need to set the neighbor, what interface to broadcast to, and that's 10.1.1.1. And how is that going to be working? Passive, default, setup, commit, save, done. Now, if I had DHCP running, I could do a set service dhcp-relay, a listen-interface, what interface to listen for DHCP requests, and then also we could do the same thing, upstream-interface, and that's the interface to send it out, send that DHCP request, you know, the DORA, send it out, and then you also specify set service DHCP-relay space server, and then the IP address of your DHCP server, and that's all that's to that. I'm not going to bother doing that here. I just want to see this work. The one thing that we do need to do is we need to set a default route here. So set protocols, right, for routing. So set protocols static. Helps if I spell static correctly, right? There we go. What's that static default route? 0.0.0.0.0/0. And what's the next hop to go out? Well, there we go. Oops. Hey, what did I type? Oh, I typed something wrong here. I missed something. Set protocols, and it's static route. There we go. 0.0.0.0/0, and then next hop, where does it send it? 10.1.1.1. Enter. Commit. Save it. We're on router 2. Wonder if I can get to the internet. Well, first off, can I ping 10.1.1.1? Yes, I can. How about the other subnet gateway address? Ping 192.168.1.1. Yeah, I can ping that, so I got connectivity. Think I can get to the internet? How about 4.2.2.3? Hey! There we go. Just like that. 2 routers, fully configured, subnets, WANLink, network address translation, RIP for dynamic routing, working. Control C. Everything's set up. I can just hit exit. Over here, I can hit exit. I'm logged out. Oh, wait a minute. Here I was out my prompt there. So there I'm out. Let's take a look. I am using right now 800, 850 mega RAM. That'll come down. Just like that, we've got 2 routers set up, 25 minutes in. Obviously, I've done this a couple times. It took me a lot longer the first time I played around with it. Go to the website, play around with it, download. Great product if you want to do some routing. Doesn't take hardly anything. I can tell you right now, less than a gigabit of storage for the router, much less. I hope you enjoyed this lab. If you did, please make sure you subscribe to my channel. And as always, I'll see you in the next lab or lesson. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.